I see a few more participants now. Thank you so much for joining. We'll give everybody just one additional minute and then we'll kick off. Appreciate your patience. Okay, I think we should get started. Hello and welcome everybody to the Success Without Limits, Oseo and Salesforce Revenue Cloud webinar. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're logging in from today. We've got an action-packed agenda and some very interesting speakers that we'd like to showcase to you today. But before we do that, just a few housekeeping rules. Lindsay, if you could go on to the next slide, please. You'll all be joined and you'll be on mute. If you do have questions, which we certainly encourage, please do use the Q&A panel that will be at the bottom of your Zoom window. So if you have questions, please ask and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. So moving on to the agenda then. So we have, I will be introducing the team that will be speaking to you today. Followed by the state of play of Salesforce Revenue Cloud. We'll then go through the Oseo success story, and then we'll have an inspirational session with Rebecca Romero, so tying in how you can have success without limits, and then finally closing off with a Q&A panel at the end. So it should be good fun. Let me now take this opportunity to introduce the speakers that we have today. First off, we have our customer speaker, Thora. I've had the pleasure of working with Thora on her project at Oseo. It's a great initiative. She is the director of orthopedics and prosthetics of digital solutions over there. Then next we have Christian Bacon. Christian's one of the more senior members of the team in the Revenue Cloud business at Salesforce, and he's the UK lead over there. We then have our special guest, Rebecca Romero, who's a two-sport world Olympic champion. Really looking forward to her session a little bit later on. Myself, I'm Michael Raja. I head up the Revenue Cloud practice for PulseSource here in EMEA. And last but certainly not least, we have Sally Jones, who heads up our healthcare and life sciences vertical here at PulseSource. All right. So next slide, please, Lindsay. So I thought I'd take a few minutes to perhaps just give you a little bit more insight into Rebecca Romero, right? So I don't know what you were doing when you were 17, but Rebecca stumbled into rowing. And then in 8 short months, she was already competing for a medal, which I think is an astounding feat to do in such a short period of time. She then was selected to represent Great Britain in the Olympic Games in Athens, where she participated in the quad sculls. And for those of you who are not very sporty like me, it's 4 people in a boat, right? She was on track, or she and her team were on track and favorites to winning the gold medal, but unfortunately, a last-minute change meant that they got the silver rather than the gold instead. But that did not stop Rebecca from continuing to participate in sports, because 3 years later, she was in the cycling event at the Beijing Olympics, right? Again, a favorite to actually win that sport, that category. And as we all know, she actually did. So she is the first Briton and only the second woman in history to have actually got 2 medals in 2 different Olympic sports. So that's an amazing achievement there, Rebecca, and really ties into the theme that we have here, which is success without limits. So looking forward to Rebecca's session a little bit later on. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce Christian Bacon now. So Christian, please take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Bit of a difficult one to follow that, I think, in terms of the opener, but hopefully I can at least start today's session off and give everyone a bit of a grounding in terms of Salesforce and Revenue Cloud. So firstly, just a quick introduction. My name is Christian Bacon. I'm part of the Revenue Cloud practice here at Salesforce. Very happy to be with you guys today. And we've made quite a bit of reference already to the term Revenue Cloud. So I wanted to take the next, I suppose, 10 minutes to really just give you a bit of context, explain the term, what Revenue Cloud is from Salesforce, and most importantly, why we are really seeing this area increasingly becoming vital to businesses if they're to sort of generate that robust revenue operation that they need to adapt to changing market conditions. Now, I've been in what is sometimes called the quote to cash space for the last 7 years or so. I've been in business process software for 20 plus. So working with everything from the largest global enterprises to very small high growth startups on their revenue management processes and initiatives. And I've very much seen the evolution of this area to that much more strategic and very much business critical status that it now has. And whilst I think most organizations have had quote to cash transformation on their agenda in some way, shape or form for some time, I think clearly the last 18 months or so, we've seen that unprecedented impact on both people and organizations. And in many cases, it's moved that sort of desire to transform very much to a necessity and the need to build more flexible and scalable revenue frameworks for their business. So for us at Salesforce, definitely seen an accelerated shift, not only so companies can manage that change and the external forces better in the future, but also so they can take advantage of new revenue models and ways in which they can diversify and scale their portfolio in a more structured and sustainable way. If you can move to the next slide, please. Great. Okay, so some of you will be familiar with the term, I'm sure, of CPQ or configure price quote, and you'll hear shortly from Tora, from Asur, in terms of the great things they're doing by leveraging this capability. But what's the association of it with Revenue Cloud, and why do we have this new naming at Salesforce? Now, once upon a time, the focus very much in this space was all about configuring products. So making sure complex offerings could be quoted for quickly and to ensure that everything was compatible. And that was CPQ. But being quite often yet another three-letter acronym, unless you had involvement, it was really something that didn't really mean much to anyone. Now, CPQ is very important. It's still part of the journey, but it has become a capability within a much wider narrative and a much wider journey that relates to the complete commercial journey of a customer, which we at Salesforce often term as that customer revenue cycle. Now, the reason we now have this wider focus is because of the change in market expectations with the customer as the central part. So the opportunity and the demands presented by B2B buyers is now much higher. New revenue models give rise to the opportunity to monetize your customer relationships in new ways. But also B2B buyers are much more demanding than they used to be. They're looking for more flexibility. They need more commercial options. They want faster engagement cycles. They want cohesive support, and they want easy ways to transact. And how easy you are to do business with is often a critical factor in how you're able to stay competitive. Next slide, please. But as we know, having flexibility and being able to adapt to these market demands isn't an easy thing. And finding ways to adopt these new revenue models and monetization strategies just adds to the pressure. Now, legacy environments for many companies are often a series of iterations where point solutions and siloed processes have been generated to meet a need, but ultimately they evolve into this complex network of people, processes and technology that are often not working in harmony. Now, I appreciate this is quite a messy slide, but this is intentionally so because the reality is revenue management environments can be messy. And this is why one of the biggest initiatives of senior stakeholders that we work with at Salesforce is a desire to rationalize this environment, to connect it, to simplify it, and to optimize the journey and all of the activities so that companies can spend more time innovating and bringing new offerings to market rather than trying to keep all of this stuff working. Next slide, please. Great. So this is where Revenue Cloud comes in. But what actually is it? Now, Revenue Cloud has been developed by Salesforce as a single platform with a series of dedicated capabilities designed to manage the complete commercial workflow. So it's a unified journey covering the entire revenue cycle, catering for all of your products, prices, orders, contracts, and invoicing and payments, if you wish, all in one place. Now, what differentiates Revenue Cloud is that it's one platform. Being purely an extension of the Salesforce CRM, it enables a single data model and a common set of logic, a common set of governance and controls that you can then surface to any channel. Now, this singular platform approach really does allow you to do things that are often, up to this point, difficult to realize. So, for example, it provides a unified buying journey across all of your customer touch points. So regardless of where a customer may engage with you, they have a consistent experience. Secondly, this consistent customer experience is powered by a single integrated price book and a product catalog that's designed to support all of your lines of business. So not just complex configured products, it could be subscriptions or pay-as-you-go offers, for example. And then having dedicated capabilities and being underpinned by the Salesforce platform, it means that you can leverage the inherent features in the platform. So things like financial controls to help with compliance. You've got AI to power personalization, things like discounting guidance and perhaps product recommendations. And you've got analytics that cover the complete transaction cycle. So you get an accurate view on your revenue operations and your KPIs, which traditionally is quite difficult to do. So the last thing I just wanted to mention here is to draw your attention to that central product catalog section on this screen, as this is absolutely key in providing the foundation for growth. Many enterprise customers I work with want to move into things like recurring revenue and subscriptions and consumption-based offerings, but they don't want to run lots of different systems and create selling silos. So Revenue Cloud provides that standardized framework covering all of these different revenue models, so you can effectively bundle and cross-sell and bring new offerings to market quickly, but it ensures that you have different fulfillment and revenue recognition treatments governed for the downstream systems. Next slide, please. So just before I hand back to the team, last thing I wanted to touch upon really was the benefit side, because there's no point avoiding it. Any change to revenue management systems and processes is going to cause some level of disruption. And even in a phased approach, it's usually not a small undertaking, and it certainly requires a decent level of both management support and effort to do that transformation. So the important question is really, what can it deliver to you? Now, the encouraging news is that I would say unequivocally, the business case is always rock solid. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about Revenue Cloud, is because when you monetize the impact that a platform like this against one of these KPIs, the results are typically very strong. And then when you look at that across a number of KPIs, the cumulative effect is exponential, really. So what matters here is that these key measures are the ones that important to companies, and they're laser focused on. They are the core things that matter to businesses, and they have a direct correlation to not just the customer excellence, but often the strategic vision, and also things like the financial imperatives such as growth, profit, and EBITDA measures, for example. So to bring this to life in a bit more detail and provide you with a real life example, I'm going to hand now back to the team, over to Tora, to take you through how Asura utilizing Salesforce Revenue Cloud to continue their operational success.
Thank you, Christian. And hello, everyone. My name is Tora, and I work for Asura. Maybe a little bit on my background. You can just move to the next slide, Michael. I'm an engineer from school, and I started actually as an engineer working for R&D, developing neck braces for Asura a while ago. But then I evolved from that into product management, where I was curious to learn more about the market and understanding how you bring a product to market, who are the stakeholders, how you market the product, what does it mean for a medical device product. And now, as for the last 1 or 2 years, I've actually transitioned over to customer experience at Össur. And so now I'm diving into the whole value chain and thinking kind of beyond the product. And so it's been a great journey so far, and I'm still having a lot of fun and always learning new things. And so I want to introduce you maybe a little bit about the company first, and then we'll go into our success story. So we can move to the next slide, Michael. Yeah, so Össur is a global leader in non-invasive orthopedics. We were founded in Reykjavik in Iceland 50 years ago. So this year is actually our birthday year. Our mission is to improve mobility of users so they can live life without limitation. And you can kind of see a glimpse of our history here on this slide from the day when we were founded. We've grown organically through product innovation over the years, as well as through acquisitions, and built quite an extensive portfolio of product. And we are now the #2 player in this industry that we play in. We're very innovation driven. You can see here examples of products that we sell and have developed. And we spend about 5% of our sales in R&D every year. And we are listed in the Nasdaq in Copenhagen. If you move to the next slide, Michael. So we operate mainly in 2 market segments, bracing and supports or orthosis, and then prosthetics, which is what the O&P in my title stands for. We have on the prosthetic side, we have artificial limbs, both legs and arms. And on the bracing side, we have injury solutions and OA solutions. And I think we can just move to the next one. We have a global presence, as you can see. Our products are sold all over the world. And we have large offices in Foothill Ranch in California, in Eindhoven in the Netherlands, and in Shanghai in China. And our headquarters are here in Reykjavik, Iceland. We have about 3,000 FTEs, and 500 of them are here located in Iceland. So now let's dive into the story. The next slide, please. So I'm assuming most of the audience doesn't know much about prosthetics or lower limb artificial legs. So this is just to give you a glimpse of what it contains. Here you see in the picture a nice prosthetic leg, and pointing out kind of all of the different products that go into making a leg like this, because every leg is custom made for every person. We're all very different and we have different needs. So every one of those components are selected specifically for each patient. Started kind of on the top there with the silicone liner, which is what actually rolls onto the patient's residual limb and attaches the artificial leg to the patient. Then you have different suspension systems that secures the liner in the hard socket. That is the next part here. Then you have some hardware that connects the socket to the knee. In this case, the Rheo knee, a very nice bionic knee that Össur makes. Then there's another set of hardware that connects the knee to the foot, that creates the accurate length for the limb, and accurate alignment is also created through these various different components. And then you end with the foot and the foot cover. We have to have the right size, the right side, and the right color, etc. And so maybe just to try and give you an idea of the complexity that goes into making each one of these legs, and all the choices and variables that are in play. So each one of these product categories has a number of options, and many of them also then variations and sizes, etc. And so the prosthetist, who is the clinical expert making the decision for what is the best solution for the patient, has to navigate through all of these variables and make the best clinical choice, as well as just some technical decisions that have to be made based on our technical specifications as the product manufacturer. And so we saw this as an ideal opportunity where we could step in and significantly improve the customer experience of navigating through all of these options. the prosthetist is the clinical expert, and we should give them the right information in the right format, in the right sequence to allow them to be as efficient as possible and make good choices without having to navigate through almost like a phone book of information is kind of where we're coming from. And so, yeah, this was the opportunity in front of us that we decided would be ideal to tackle with digitalization, to create value for our customer and create efficiency in the process overall. And so I think we can move on to the next slide. I want to give you a glimpse into what we've developed with the team. We've developed the Össur portal, and it's a B2B solution. So it's a window from Össur to our prosthetist to order legs. And here you see just the basic. You log into the portal as expected, and the first page you see the overview of the patient profiles that you have created in the system, as well as your order history. And then on the next slide, it really boils down to 3 simple steps, and I'm very hesitant to say the word simple here because of course we want it to appear very seamless and relatively simple, but this is quite complex, and in the back end there's a lot of data that has to go to the right place in order for this to all work together. But the first step is the patient profile, where you enter various different information about the patient, their weight, for example, their activity, which side is amputated, the right or the left, and kind of what level. Is it above the knee or below the knee? So these are all technical input parameters that we use to filter out products that are irrelevant, just based on indication for use of those products and our technical specifications. And so the next step, configuring the leg. The prosthetist here has then a very clean view of what are the relevant product options for them, and they can make the best clinical choices for the patient and choose all the way from the top, from the liner and down to the foot. And the third step here is simply placing the order. So this really has the focus of creating the best customer experience all the way through, and this allows the customer to spend the most time on what's most valuable to them, which is making the clinical decisions in the process and supporting the patient. I think what was key and has been key for making this work for us was working really closely with the user of the system, or what this is intended, who this is intended for. So we developed this in close collaboration with prosthetists, both internally and externally, and they are always in the loop, testing and giving us feedback for each iteration of the system. And we are getting some success stories around this already. We're hearing really good feedback from the customers that have been introduced to this, mostly in the US, and they are happy. They see this as very beneficial and efficient on their end. And then an extra bonus for us is actually creating a lot of efficiency internally for Össur as well. And maybe, like Christian was saying, opening up a door of kind of a lot of future opportunities that we see here for this, because we are really early still and have just really gotten started here. And so there's a lot of exciting project ahead of us. And what this also did, just kind of tackling these 3 simple steps, it actually covers a lot of the questions up front from our customers. A lot of the questions that we were getting through customer service were questions that are just automatically taken care of in this process already, which is fantastic, and of course a bonus for everyone. And yeah, so like I said, we're still early, but we're seeing some success already, and we're excited about that, and it's very motivating. But at Össur, it's also easy to be motivated. The mission of the company is very rewarding, and we have, as Michael mentioned, a team called Team Usher, which is a very inspiring group of athletes. And so to show you kind of what I look to if I need a little bit of inspiration, we're going to show you a short video here with one of our team members. And then after that, we'll go to our guest here, Rebecca Romero. Excited to hear her story. Thank you.
I was born without an arm and a lower leg on my left side, but I never considered myself as a disabled. Whether it's on a track, in a classroom, or working with my foundation, I am focused on constantly becoming a better version of myself. I like to have fun, but I have big goals in sprints and long jump. I want to be the best, and I know I can do it. Usher's Cheetah Blades give me the freedom to follow my dream, and thanks to their technology, I'm one step closer to making them a reality.
Hi, thanks very much, Michael, and hi to everyone. It was great, Thora, to just hear a little bit more about what you do, and for me, having trained alongside Paralympians to see the amazing prosthetics that they are able to use that enable them to do the sport alongside able-bodied athletes is fantastic. So it was really great to hear more there. So yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for having me. I'm going to kick off with a common question that I get asked when people find out that I'm an Olympian and been to the Olympic Games. And when people find out, they quite often are kind of overwhelmed and go, oh my goodness, the Olympics, what must that have been like? It must have been amazing. You know, and if I just want to give the easy answer, I'm like, yeah, it's fantastic. It was brilliant. But really inside my head, I was going, no, do you know what? It was actually in the 2 weeks building up to the final of the Olympic Games, it was probably one of the worst 2 weeks of my life that I've ever had. And it sounds ridiculous to say, but basically it was one of the most stressful times, and I don't think an hour went by of each day where I wasn't wishing that the ground would open up and swallow me up, because you know, you see the kind of razzmatazz, the amazing kind of last minute performances of athletes on the TV, but to know what actually is going on inside for every athlete and their story, it's pretty much torture, especially when you're going in for the second time as favourite for the gold medal, and last time you feel like things went wrong and you lost that gold medal. So second time round, it's even more nerve-wracking. And you know, the big reason for that is because for an athlete, it's in the Olympic Games is their defining moment. It's going to be one race that defines who and what they're going to become for the rest of their lives, and it comes down to well, the countdown of a clock and the firing of a gun on the start line. And for an athlete, it's 4 years. If not more, of hard work, and it comes down to one particular date, hour, minute, second countdown of a clock. And you know that kind of when you cross that finish line, you don't know quite whether it's going to be tears of joy or tears of despair that you're going to be having. And all the training for an athlete is about controlling that outcome as much as you can, and you can control that outcome by knowing exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do that. So I quite often talk about my experiences and you know, what I think it takes to be successful and how I achieved success in 2 different sports. But today I was thinking about the theme that you guys have got this afternoon, and you know, I love that idea of success without limits and a life without limits. So it's forced me to think about things just a little bit differently today. And I was thinking about success and how really success is the outcome of how you navigate the limitations that you encounter and how you overcome them. And regarding limits, you know, it's about how much we can push our limits and also how we can put things in place that enable us to push those limits. And when you start thinking about limitations, you begin to realize that there's actually quite a large amount of possible limitations that we can encounter, like quite possibly hundreds over the progress of working towards a goal. And the type of limitations that we regularly will encounter, the background that we might be from, stereotypes, attitudes, beliefs, thoughts, physical opportunities, our environment, behaviours, fears, and experiences, and all those things play into potentially how we see ourselves and the outcome that we might be able to provide for ourselves. And from that mix of limitations that I've said, there's limitations that we put on ourselves that would be internal, and then there's limitations that other things will put on us and other people will put on us, and they'll be external. But what's crucial is how you actually perceive those limitations. So for one person, a limitation is something they can't overcome. It's holding them back, it's a barrier. But for another, a limitation is just a challenge to overcome. So it's a state of mind of how you see them. And I can recall a few key moments in my career where the theme of limits or limitations or being limited had a huge impact on the outcome of my career. And the first of those is my background. So I definitely wasn't a precocious young athletic talent. And as you've heard, I only really got into sport at the age of 17. And I was from a single parent background, and certainly not of a background that you would expect a rower to come from, generally being more of an affluent sport. And I enjoyed doing sport, but I didn't really have anyone in the family that was sporting, encouraging me. I didn't have any sporting idols, no influences. And when I watched sport on TV, and if I saw World Championship athletes or Olympic athletes, I just think that they must be superhumans. And I knew that I wasn't a superhuman, so it was never on my radar to be an elite athlete. And that wasn't until it was that I fell into rowing completely randomly. And after a few weeks of having joined the rowing club, the coach sat me down one day and said, you've got some talent, and I think that one day you'd be good enough to row for Great Britain and maybe even go to the Olympic Games. And I just sat there thinking, is this guy crazy? Does he not realize I'm just an ordinary person? And as they say, the rest is history, because basically from that day on, that coach that told me these things allowed me to kind of smash away all of those limiting factors that I had in place. And then the second aspect of my career, whether there was involved a lot of kind of limiting things, was when I decided to leave the sport of rowing. And that's another common question I get asked is, why did you leave rowing when you were kind of, you'd become Olympic silver medalist, world champion? What made you want to walk away from that? And there were two questions that I was asking myself at that time. The first question was, if I sit on the start line of a world or Olympic final, I need to be able to sit there and say, I've done absolutely everything that I can do to make myself the best that I can be. And I think anyone approaching a big challenge should be able to, when they're about to hit it, should be able to answer yes to that question. But for me, I found that I couldn't answer yes to that question. Number one, because of the environment that I was in, and also because I felt that I wasn't always as prepared as I should be. I hadn't done exactly everything that to make myself the best that I could be, and not because I hadn't done it, but because I wasn't being facilitated in the team to do that. And then the second question was, okay, I was unhappy doing what I was doing, and I was kind of plodding along each day. But if I had a crystal ball and I was able to look into it and see that I was guaranteed to win gold in Beijing, would I want to still carry on doing the sport? And my answer to that was, well, no, actually not really, because it was making me unhappy every day, and it was impacting my life outside of sport. And also, is it the right thing to do something unhappily and not in the right way that you believe, and then to just have 10 minutes of happiness on the podium? And for me, I wasn't comfortable with that. So I made the tough decision to actually say, I've reached my limits, and also I feel limited in this situation for the dreams and ambitions that I have. So I actually walked away from the sport. I then very swiftly encountered an opportunity to join the British cycling team, and that was the third aspect of my career that could have been life-changing one way or another, depending on the decision I made. And being faced with the bizarre situation of British cycling saying that I'd been talent ID'd and they wanted to fast-track me to the Olympic Games. And I was having to consider this opportunity, whether I wanted to do it or not. So at that point of being offered that opportunity, I was a complete novice and no experience in the sport. A switch between sports had never been done before, so it was a complete unknown. It was also a very open and public thing that I was going to do, and therefore if I failed, I'd look like a complete fool very openly in front of a big audience. And also at the time, the cycling world were very negative about the fact that British Cycling were opening up a full position for the team to myself. But essentially what I knew that I had to do was that I had to not worry about the fears that I had. So I also was fearful that the only environment I'd been experiencing within sport was that of rowing. And I felt, well, I wonder whether cycling is going to be the same. So all of these factors, I was thinking, all pushing me to think that I should actually not do this. But in that moment of my career, I had to think about pushing all those limiters away, focusing on the positives that I was seeing within the sport, focus on the positives of the experience I'd had beforehand. And also the main thing that I didn't want to do was 10 years down the line, be looking back and wondering, what could have been. So when it comes to pushing our limits, we all know that athletes are in the game, are in the business of pushing their body and mind. But in order to push the limits of performance, I think it goes deeper than that. And actually, you've got to be clever enough to put in place just the deeper foundations of success. And when I look back on my career and I think in hindsight, what was it that enabled me to go from that silver medal to make that gold medal, and what it was within the cycling team that enabled me to do that, I like to put it into the perspective of my winning framework. And my winning framework consists of 4 elements that you need to make sure that you put in place in order to have success. The 4 areas are that I think you need to create a winning environment, a winning strategy, a winning mentality, and a winning soul. And for me, I was able to fulfill that winning environment within the sport of cycling. And, it's one of the most important foundations that you put in place. If you get that in place, then you can build the rest on that. And it's about being able to plant yourself where you'll bloom. And from there, you'll be able to flourish and grow. And that's what I found I was able to do within the British cycling team. And the second area of a winning strategy, that's about the dream and the vision and creating that. And then about breaking down the components of your goal and knowing exactly what you need to do to achieve that and putting the things in place to be able to achieve that. So when I spoke about being on the start line within the sport of rowing, I hadn't been able to break that goal down as effectively as I was able to and be supported to do so, facilitated to do so in the sport, in the Great Britain cycling team. And then also your winning strategy needs to be about having a smarter, not harder strategy as well. And a lot of people think it's just work harder, train harder, but actually be smarter and cleverer. And then a winning mentality. So you can have the best, most well thought out strategy, but actually it's between what's the ears that counts and really makes it happen. So when you have a tough goal, how will you make sure that you execute that excellent strategy that you've put in place? How will you keep motivated? How will you overcome the obstacles? And how will you deal with the stress and pressure? And those are the most common things that come along when you're trying to achieve big. And then lastly, a winning soul. I think this is one of the things that gets overlooked most often. And I definitely didn't have a winning soul when I was in rowing. And I don't think you can be successful if you don't have character. So a winning soul is about your unique identity. It's about what you do with your soul. It's your soul and how it drives you and what makes you tick. It's the things that inspire and motivate you and you as a person. So I just want to take you back to what I was talking about initially, that common question that I get asked about being at the Olympic Games and actually how I want to say it's the most kind of fearful 2 weeks I've ever had, and take you back to the start line of the Olympic final and how I was, even at that point with the last 30-second countdown on the clock, thinking I wish the ground would swallow me up, and knowing that I was approaching the race where it was going to be a real battle of body and mind, and the last minute countdown of the clock comes down to that battle of mind. And for me, it was about being able to kind of push away those limiting fears and do everything that I'd done in training to prepare for that, to push away those limiting fears and focus in on those things that I'd been able to put in place to enable me to be successful. So in Beijing, I was on the start line knowing that I had done absolutely everything that I could have done to make myself the best that I could be. And I'd enjoyed the experience. And the twist of fate really that occurred by making the decision to walk away from the limiters that I had and go elsewhere, and the door of fate opened up to enable me to put all of those things in place and be on that start line and that starting gun go. And 3 minutes and 27 seconds later, I was Olympic champion. It was just one of the most incredible things. And although I painted a picture of the Olympic Games being almost like one of the most tragic 2 weeks of my life, you know, I don't actually hold that terrible memory. The memory that I do have was actually of standing on the podium and how I saw the guy come along with a tray of medals, and everything whilst I was training, when it was really hard, the days were hard, and I was trying to stay motivated and push myself. And I would think of every scenario that could happen at the Olympic Games, from not qualifying to getting on the podium and having this dream of a bronze medal, and then getting greedy and thinking, actually, no, I want a silver medal, and then get even greedier and thinking, I really want that gold medal. And to stand on the podium and have the guy bring the tray and hand the bronze medal to the girl on my left and the silver medal to the girl on my right, and then hand the gold medal to me. And I was able to walk away with it. And I can now, you know, look at this at any point, and that can be my overriding memory of the Games. It's a pretty special thing to be able to do, but even more special sometimes, I think, is being able to share my story with people, and to relive it now that I've been retired for so long is also pretty special as well. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand back to Sally now.
Wow, that was absolutely amazing. And so glad you brought the medal along. Thank you so much for that. An excellent visual image. What an amazing session. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. It's been a pleasure for myself to listen to, so I hope our audience have enjoyed as much. We're going to have a short Q&A. If you have any that you want to pop into the chat, we can either answer here and now or follow up if we run out of time. I'm going to start with a question for Tora. You spoke of Team Assure and how it's such an inspirational place to work. How important is cultivating this inspirational team environment in driving success and innovation? I think, you know, Rebecca touched on environment. How does that operate within Assure in driving towards your goals?
Yeah, I think it's absolute key. You know, keeping everyone inspired and motivated to the purpose of what we're doing. And I actually like the winning framework also that Rebecca was talking about earlier. I can really relate to that, also in the sense of a teamwork of aligning everyone on the, you know, on the winning strategy and the mindset to get to the end goal. Of course, there are many obstacles that get in the way along the way, and it's a journey, and we're not actually, maybe the differences were it never feels like we're anywhere close to the end goal, because it's just a never-ending story. There's always so much more that we want to do. But of course, there are smaller victories in between that we need to celebrate, and that's where we, you know, come together and understand what we have achieved, and it's so important to do that. It's been a little bit challenging now in COVID, not be able to just kind of meet and celebrate the way we're used to. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that soon, hopefully. But yeah, absolutely a key element to keep the team motivated, keep the focus on the end goal and the strategy that we're trying to execute.
Fantastic. And Rebecca, we heard how Toro made the switch from engineering to customer experience. We've spoken about your bold switch from rowing to cycling. I think it demonstrates that success is not linear. What advice would you give to companies, people, listeners today that are striving for goals in managing change, that change in direction? I think it's something that resonates with everyone. We've all had to adapt and be very open to change recently. So what advice would you have for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all does come down to change and an openness to that. And it's probably one of the most difficult things to get humans to adapt to, because we're creatures of habit, and change isn't something that we really find easy. So I guess if you're talking to an organization who are going through a big change, that it comes down to, for me, it would come down essentially to, again, starting off with the foundations of environment and what that means for people, because it's all about people making those changes. Get the environment right, and also get the culture right for people to be able to feel comfortable, and get the communication right. And then that's really going to come down to leadership, isn't it? To be able to put those things in place so that people can get in a comfortable environment to adapt to these changes. But then also, again, communication being communicating the strategies and the things that are going to happen. It's a kind of similar thing to kind of following the framework that I was talking about, getting the environment in place, getting the correct strategies that are going to enable people to adapt to these changes. It's one thing approaching a change, but again, breaking down what that change is going to, what it means to do that, and putting everything in place. That's another thing that will frustrate people, is not doing the right things to get success out of that change. So, and then it plays in as well to the mentality, getting attitudes and mentality right for people, and following that structure. But it's a tricky thing to do, and for companies to get right as well.
I really appreciate your honesty as well of describing the fear, and using, fear can be a limit, fear can be a driver. I think that's something I'll take away from today, among many points you've made. So thank you. So another question I have, and actually I have one for you, Rebecca, in the chat, which I will return to. What advice can the panel provide regarding key success factors to consider when approaching a Revenue Cloud-based program? So I will put that forward to Christian and Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. I will make sure Michael keeps me honest in this, but I would definitely say, so first and foremost, I mean, Rebecca covered a lot of things around the sort of, success piece, and they're the fundamentals, I would say. Without the sort of structure and the team focus, the stakeholder buy-in, etc., the technology is not going to magically deliver on the objectives. You've got to have those things in place. But if I took it from the next sort of level down, specifically in terms of what to think about and prepare for, and I'm sure Tor will sort of confirm to this, is a large proportion is thinking about in the structure of your products and pricing. What that sort of structure looks like. Is there the opportunity to rationalize that? Is there the opportunity to standardize, and taking a strong look at that area? Outside of that, I would definitely say, make sure you focus on the bigger picture. So one of the things I would definitely say is don't, and it's very easy to do, is don't go chasing that sort of 5% of very complex things that you do at the expense of the 95% of what you can do and productize and get value from. Right? So I see that a lot in deployment. So always think about that bigger picture. And to be fair, a good partner will keep you aligned to that sort of focus. They will, they'll keep you aligned to best practice, and they'll challenge you on anything that moves you into sort of a custom sort of phase, because you really don't want to be going down that route. You want to stay as standardized as possible so that you can scale effectively. And then lastly, I would just say, you know, make sure you sort of phase and iterate. So to Rebecca's points about limitations, right? I think from a project point of view, it's very easy to try and encompass everything, and then you get a bit of fatigue around something that's so huge. I would definitely look at saying, right, look at phasing it, iterate it, get value from the initial footprint from Revenue Cloud, and that often builds the confidence. You get the value out of it and the benefits, and it allows you to invest in next steps. Michael, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that from a delivery standpoint.
I'll keep it really brief so that we've got time for maybe a question or two. But to put a wrapper on what Christian said and what's been touched on in this webinar is to work backwards from the customer experience. So you saw when Thora was presenting that she digitized a rather complicated process, but rather than replicate the complexities in a digital form, she and the team looked at simplifying that journey. So when you make it easy to buy from you, that's the best formula for increasing revenue. So please keep that in mind when you're going through an exercise like this. Have the customer experience at the forefront of everything you do.
Fantastic. I've got a question here. If I'm looking to embark on a journey similar to Assure, should I consider Revenue Cloud or B2B commerce? Michael, I don't know if you want to take that one on.
I'll give you the short version, and it is,
Yep.
It depends on your business objectives. If you sell high frequency, low complexity products that require a little bit more finesse on pricing, then definitely B2B commerce is the way to go. If you have an internal sales use case that's highly complex, that requires a quote unquote white glove service, then CPQ is definitely a better bet. But of course, it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray in between. So much like how Osio is using Revenue Cloud today, they're actually using Salesforce CPQ and making it public facing. And they wouldn't have been the ideal candidate for getting B2B commerce. But there is also use cases where you want to get both, where an organization could use B2B commerce as the front end for some of the simpler use cases, and then using the same glass, so to speak, and having CPQ presented via B2B commerce to tackle some of the more complex configuration and pricing use cases. So yeah, if you need any further information, definitely reach out to us and we can give you more guidance and advice on which way to go if you're looking at digitizing your sales process.
Fantastic. I have a question from Bill on costs associated and where can I get information on necessary steps and processes. Bill, we're connected on LinkedIn, so I can follow up after this session with where to get started. And then Clive, a question for Rebecca from Clive. This is, I mean, I wish we all had the answer to this. So is there anything in particular that differentiates those that are the best from those that are very good at something?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
So I've just jotted a few points down. Okay, so bullet points, those that are focused on detail, so real focus on detail. Another thing is being able to, I love this phrase, cut the crap. Okay, so a lot of people think that they're doing the work, they're doing exactly what they need to, but actually if you kind of really had to strip everything apart, make sure that you're not doing anything unnecessarily, it's really got to fit your goal, or else don't do it, you haven't got time for it. An ability to persevere and to suffer, to won't accept anything less, like never happy really, so you're always wanting more. A no compromise approach, constantly pushing the bar, again never happy with where they're at, operate in discomfort all the time. You know, they won't be in their comfort zone, they'll always be outside their comfort zone, and they'll know what they're capable of, so they'll set their goal to be capable, but actually you know, it's about keeping a silent dream of what you actually really want to achieve, which is bigger than that, and still aiming for that. And then also to be patient. So those that are patient, so they'll work at something they won't see the results, but they'll keep going, and they won't have that give up point, and they'll keep going. And then, sometime later down the line, because it never happens instantly, the point at which you think you put enough work in to get a result, those that just keep going that little bit more will actually be the ones that stand out in the end and actually get that better step on, that better result.
Outstanding answer. And I hope everyone, me included, I'm going to go attack my afternoon after this session of inspiring panelists. Tora, you're at the beginning of this journey. We cannot wait to see where it goes. We talked a lot about environment. Just working with these very talented people on this has certainly proven how your environment can drive you forward. I hope everyone's enjoyed. I will hand back to Michael just for some closing remarks.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sally. So, Lindsay, if you can skip a couple of slides, please. Thank you. No, one back. Thank you. So for those of you looking at starting out journey on Revenue Cloud, it can be quite inundating. There's a lot to think about. So in order to help you out, as a special offer for those of you who've decided to attend, we're offering a free Revenue Cloud health check for everyone that's attended. This includes both a technical and business assessment for your lead to craft process. So it's not just a technical, hey, here's what you need to do. It's also aligning your business in what needs to happen before you take the leap. And what happens at the end of this exercise is we come up with a clear set of recommendations on what you need to do next. So there is no ambiguity. Thank you so much. So I'd like to close by saying, first and foremost, thank you so much for all the attendees who took time out of their busy day to join us. Really appreciate your attention. It's been great to have you on the session. It's been a great webinar on the whole. So I would like to also take this opportunity to say a special thank you to Christian, Thora, Rebecca, and Sally for being on the panel and making this webinar a really enjoyable one. And last but certainly not least, I want to give a special thank you to someone who's been invisible. Oftentimes, in order for great things to happen, there are a lot of people who work in the background to make it a success. And that special person is Lindsay Gadd, who helped put all of this together. So a huge thank you to Lindsay for making this a great event. Once again, thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a pleasant rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.